Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I want to do a comparison for you between Call of Duty and Fortnite. More specifically, which one of these games actually makes the most money for the developers and publishers. I'll have gameplay of Call of Duty first, and then we'll transition into a bit of Fortnite gameplay and kind of mix and match as we talk about it. And as all of you know on this channel, as primarily Call of Duty fans, you know that Call of Duty was the dominant shooter on console. It was just about the dominant shooter in the entire market, but was a little bit displaced by Overwatch and has never really been able to catch up with Counter-Strike on PC. But being the biggest console shooter probably made it the biggest shooter in the world, and it was very dominant when it came to YouTube content, Twitter content, Twitch streams, just about everything, until all of a sudden this new scrappy little game called Fortnite rolled in and took its place. Fortnite is now the most played shooter in the world. It is the biggest console game in the world and one of the biggest games, period. Does that mean that Call of Duty's dead? Well, not quite. We fans of these games often forget that games are businesses, to the developers, to the publishers, and to just about everybody in all of the associated industries. They are business vehicles or software services. So they don't care as much about how much you like the game or how artistic it is, and surprisingly sometimes even how many players it has. It can have a lot of players, but if it's not making money, it won't stay. The only way for a game to stay and be big and be dominant is for it to be profitable. But does a free-to-play game like Fortnite, where the only revenue the developers get are from cosmetic skins, going to make as much money as Call of Duty? Or how about income per user or return on investment? I'm going to be talking some numbers today. I'm going to be talking through them as much as I'm going to avoid showing screenshots and math all over the screen, though there may be a few. And we're going to take a look at Fortnite first. Epic Games recently announced that Fortnite has a monthly income of $126 million, which is extremely high. Of note, this beat out PUBG's monthly income of $103 million. The Chinese gaming giant Tencent owns 40% of Epic Games and owns all of PUBG. And it also owns CoD Online and is partnered with a lot of companies for Chinese distribution. So Tencent's going to win no matter who wins this bet. But anyway, of that $126 million, all of that comes from V-Bucks purchases and cosmetics. Since the game is free to play, it costs nothing for you to download and install and play. Currently, Fortnite has 3 million concurrent users on at any given time. Their maximum was 3.4, which they broke the PUBG record recently. And their monthly player counts, they call around 50 million total players, which is like some 2015 League of Legends numbers, which is really, really, really high. So with 50 million total players and revenue of $126 million a month, that means your revenue per player is about $2.50, which may seem a little bit low to you, but that's very average for the free-to-play industry. It's very similar to free-to-play games on the phone. It was almost identical to League of Legends numbers, and I really do believe that that is an accurate representation of how much an average Fortnite player spends, because you have a lot of players that download and play the game. You see them with the default skins. They spend no money ever, and you also have a few whales out there that'll spend $100, $200, $300, $400 on skins or something like that. Of that total revenue of $126 million, it's unknown how much of that is profit, because server costs for a game like this are very high. Having 100-player servers that host up to 3 million people consecutively is not cheap. Going on a personal wager and not any sort of big fact that I could track down, I would wager that Fortnite makes around $50 to $75 million per month in pure profit. And if all of that stays on track for 2018, which honestly right now it should grow and do better than this, but if they can just maintain for 2018, they're going to look at a profit of around $800 million for this year, which is, well, a lot of money. I wish I could get a small loan of $800 million, but that doesn't seem likely because I don't have enough collateral for that. Call of Duty runs an entirely different business model. Call of Duty sells a $60 yearly game and then a $60 DLC on top of that. And then on top of that, there are microtransactions. So sales for Call of Duty games most years are around 20 million. There are some years where the games aren't doing so great, like Infinite Warfare, where it'll be less, or games where it does amazing, like Ghost or Black Ops 3, where it'll sell a lot more. But 20 million is kind of the average number for Call of Duty for total sales. sales. So the total revenue for that year that they get pretty much guaranteed is about $1.2 billion, which is a lot of money, and it immediately seems more profitable than Fortnite, but you gotta remember that's total revenue. That's not really profit. Microsoft and Sony have to take their cuts for allowing the game to be on their system. GameStop has to take cuts. They're selling physical games, whereas Fortnite's are just downloads. So you've got packaging, distribution, shipping, returns, all sorts of other things. And by most market standards, publishers get around half of whatever they charge for their game. So Activision's actual revenue for the game is about $600 million. But that $600 million is not profit. You forget that Call of Duty games do take some money to produce. As a matter of fact, they take quite a lot of money to produce and to market. They're some of the more expensive games to make and to market, and they probably cost about $250 million to make and market for each Call of Duty game. So your Activision profit is down to about $350 million, which is less than half of that of Fortnite. But we haven't even got into DLC sales and microtransactions yet. The most neat thing about those, at least on Activision's standpoint, is that Sony and Microsoft take comparatively lesser cuts for those than the distribution of full games, and digital sales generate more profit just kind of for all parties all around, and those are all digital, so that makes them a lot of money. Just pulling numbers right out of my butt, guessing on what I know about Call of Duty players, I would wager that about 1 out of 5 players buys the DLC package, and about 1 out of 10 players will spend some amount of money on supply drops. The supply drop money is, of course, highly variable. So given that, you know, of that 20 million, a fifth of them will buy the DLC and some of them will buy money on supply drops, you're looking at about an additional $250 million for the DLC packages and at least an additional $100 million on supply drops, if not more. So after adding all of that into the profit, Activision's total profit for a yearly Call of Duty game is about $700 million. It's at this point in the video I realize I should probably look up like public disclosure since it's a publicly traded company, or listen to like the average earning calls, but I'm just spitballing here and this is a little bit more fun. Call of Duty also has a lot of merchandise, a lot of branding, a lot of old game sales, a lot of old game DLC and microtransaction sales, and just like legacy income that Fortnite simply doesn't, but that is so hard to account for. I don't really want to count that. I want to count the new projects moving forward in the year. So based on the information I have right now, it looks like Call of Duty makes about $100 million less profit than Fortnite, but both of them are chasing $1 billion on a good year and a bit less than that on a bad year. So based on my little armchair analysis here, I would say that Fortnite makes around $800 million a year, if it maintains. It's not even a year old yet, and Call of Duty consistently makes around $700 million per year. So Fortnite is probably making a bit more money than Call of Duty right now. However, Call of Duty makes a ton more money per player, just an order of magnitude more money than player. Fortnite makes very, very little money per individual player, and they make their profit just on the mass volume of players that they have. Return on investment is a little bit harder to figure on this one because they have totally different costs that are relatively private, but I would lean toward Fortnite having slightly better return on investment. The amount of time and effort that they put into developing their game is going to be lesser than that of a Call of Duty game, not as a knock against them, but COD games have giant dev studios, yearly cycles, lots of voice actors, motion capture, storyboarders, artists, you know, script writers, a lot of different stuff going into that, voice actors as well going into it. Whereas Fortnite is a battle royale game with one map and a couple of goofy skins and stuff like that. That's not saying the developers are doing a bad job. They just have different things that they don't have to spend money on. So Fortnite probably does have a slightly better ROI, but it's hard to say for sure. One thing I can say for sure though is that both of them make more than enough money to stay in business. Neither of these companies is going broke anytime soon. Activision's going nowhere. Epic Games is going nowhere. Epic Games makes most of its money anyway licensing the Unreal Engine, which tons of games run on. Skyrim runs on it. PUBG runs on it. Interesting given that that's the #1 competitor to Fortnite. Guys, that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.